All right, let's jump right into a really incredible story. One about power, massive ambition, and, well, a spectacular collapse. Today, we are talking about one of history's most famous figures, Napoleon Bonaparte. We're going to look at how one guy went from basically nothing to ruling an empire, only to lose it all.
Wow. I mean, that quote really sets the stage, doesn't it? It's a story on an epic scale. You have this single individual who literally reshapes a continent and then just watches it all crumble around him. It is, for sure, the ultimate rise and fall story.
So, this is the big mystery we're going to try and unpack. It's not just about what happened, it's about the how and the why. Seriously, how does a soldier with no royal blood end up an emperor? And maybe even more baffling, how does an empire built by a military genius fall apart so quickly? To figure that out, we have to go back to the beginning. See, Napoleon's rise wasn't just about his own ambition, which he had plenty of. It was also about being the right person at exactly the right and very chaotic time.
I think the thing that's truly wild is just the speed of his climb. Napoleon wasn't born a prince or anything like that. He came from a pretty minor noble family on an island. But you have to remember, France in the 1790s was a complete mess. The revolution had left this huge power vacuum, and Napoleon, who was this brilliant military mind, he just stepped right in. And by 1799, he pulls off a military coup and takes control, just like that.
So, why did people go along with it? Why did they support him? Well, after years of chaos and terror from the revolution, France was just exhausted. People were desperate for stability. And Napoleon didn't just promise it, he actually delivered. He was winning battles, bringing glory to France, and creating order back home. It was a deal the French people were more than willing to make.
But here's the thing about Napoleon. Just ruling France was never going to be enough. His ambition was way bigger than that. He had his eyes set on all of Europe.
1804. Remember this year. This is when everything changes.
Okay, so in a move that absolutely stunned all of Europe, Napoleon did something incredible. During his coronation ceremony at Notre Dame, he took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. The message couldn't have been clearer. His power came from himself, not from God, not from tradition. He was a completely self-made emperor.
And this was the result. His control just spread all across the continent. From Italy to Spain, deep into Central Europe, his authority was backed up by the most feared army in the world at the time, the Grande Armée. For a while there, it really seemed like nothing could possibly stop him. But this is where the story takes that dramatic turn. The very same ambition that got him to the top was about to sow the seeds of his own destruction. He was on the verge of making one single catastrophic mistake. Yep, it all came down to this one decision. In 1812, he decided to invade Russia. He'd conquered so much, but it still wasn't enough. He probably thought it would be just another quick and easy victory. He was fatally wrong. What happened next was this incredible clash of military strategies. See, Napoleon's plan was what always worked for him. Find the enemy army, crush them in one huge, decisive battle, and force them to surrender. Simple. But the Russians, they completely refused to play his game. They had a different opponent in mind for Napoleon, Russia itself. So Russia's plan, it was brutally simple, and man, was it effective. They just kept retreating, again and again, luring Napoleon's massive army deeper and deeper into their vast country. And as they retreated, they burned everything. Crops, supplies, villages, leaving nothing behind. Then the real weapon arrived. The infamous Russian winter. Napoleon's army was trapped. No food, no shelter, hundreds of miles from home. It was an absolute disaster. That disastrous Russian campaign completely broke his army, and it really was the beginning of the end. The final chapter of his story, well, it happened with stunning speed. This timeline really shows you just how fast it all fell apart. The Russian disaster kicks off in 1812. By 1814, he's forced into exile. He makes this one last dramatic comeback, only to be totally defeated for good at Waterloo in 1815. I mean, in just a few short years, he goes from being the master of Europe to dying alone on a tiny, remote island. So what's the lesson here? Why did this brilliant general, this all-powerful emperor, fail so completely?
Well, the answer isn't really about one battle or one mistake.
It really came down to one thing: overconfidence. All those victories, one after another, they made him believe he was literally invincible. He just could not imagine a scenario where he would lose. And that belief, that total self-assurance, is what led him to invade Russia, a gamble almost no one else would have taken. His greatest strength became his fatal flaw.
And this quote just distills the whole lesson of his life perfectly. It's a powerful warning, right? Winning too much can create these massive blind spots. It can make you start to believe your own legend and push you to take risks that eventually will catch up with you.
So, this leaves us with one last big thought. Napoleon's story is obviously an extreme example, but the theme is pretty universal. When you look at his epic rise and his catastrophic fall, you're kind of forced to ask, is extreme ambition always destined to fail? It's a tough question, and one that Napoleon's ghost kind of leaves for all of us to think about.